In this video, I'm going to show you the proper full brake bleed procedure on this Ford F-150. We're going to bleed all 4 brakes, so let's get started. Before you start bleeding the brakes, it's very important to make sure the master cylinder is topped off. Ours is, so I'm not going to add any fluid, but if yours is not up to the full line, add .3 brake fluid until it is full. Otherwise, if it drains too low, it could suck in air and then you have a bigger problem. To start bleeding the brakes, you're going to want to start at the rear passenger side caliper. That is the furthest away from the master cylinder and the ABS module. It's important that you take that into consideration because the brake lines will go from the master to the ABS and then to the wheels. So, having said that, we're going to go to the right rear. It's important to have a second person inside the vehicle that can pump the brakes for you. As they pump it up, you're going to want to leave this closed. That way air and fluid doesn't start shooting out here until you are ready. So go ahead and pump up the brakes. I'll have my helper pump them up a few times, and then once they're done, they're going to hold pressure on that brake pedal. That's going to provide pressure through the lines, and as we crack this open with, in this case, a 10mm wrench, fluid will start coming out. So make sure you have a collection bucket ready so that you can catch this fluid before it gets all over the ground. Okay, they're holding pressure. I'm going to open this. Air and fluid will come out. There we go. Pedal has most likely reached the floor at this point because fluid stopped coming out. So before they let go of the pedal, I'm going to close that bleeder screw, and we're going to repeat this process several times until there's no more air coming out. Or if you're trying to flush old brake fluid, do this until you see clean brake fluid coming out of the line, which on this caliper particularly, because it's so far from the master and the front of the vehicle, could take a while. So having said that, let's repeat the procedure. Go ahead and pump up the brakes. Here we go. Open it up for the last time. Fluid's coming out. It stopped. I'm going to close it. You can let go of the brake pedal now. I'm going to clean the mess up. You definitely don't want to confuse the residual brake fluid for a potential leak in the future, so I'm going to wipe this off with a rag. You can use a paper towel, whatever you have. Make sure it's clean. And now that I'm done with this, I'm going to use some brake parts cleaner to degrease the entire area. Make sure the brake fluid is gone. Okay, clean the caliper, clean the line where it's sprayed. And don't forget to cap this off so debris doesn't make its way in there. If you don't have a boot, it's all right, but it's best to actually have one so that you can prevent debris from going in there. Now, like I said, let's move over to the driver's side rear. That's the left rear, and we'll bleed there. Before we start bleeding on this side, it's always a good idea to check that master cylinder in between calipers to make sure it didn't drain too much, especially if you're flushing out the lines, because you do drain a lot of fluid doing that. Now, let's move over to the driver's side rear. That's the left rear. I'm going to pop off this cover, and we're going to have our assistant pump up the brakes again. And after a few pumps, with the brake pedal depressed, let's crack this open. Oh, there we go. We got some air out of that one. So that's good. Pedal has reached the floor. Close it up and pump again. We're just going to repeat the process several times until there's no more air and there's clean fluid coming out of this line. Let's open it up. I usually like to have 2 to 3 bleeds of clean fluid, and that ensures that everything is done. So at this point, you can release the brake pedal. The bleed is done on this side. I'm satisfied with the amount of clean fluid that I got out of here with no air bubbles, so I'm all set. I'm going to clean this side up, and then we will check that master cylinder again, make sure it's topped off, especially on the front brakes. The front brakes actually flow a lot more fluid than the rears, so you definitely want to make sure you have a full master cylinder for that. I'm going to clean this off, and we'll move to the passenger side front, that being the right front caliper. Now we are onto the passenger's front caliper, so the front right. I'm going to use an 11mm on this. Unfortunately, a wrench doesn't quite fit just because it's recessed into the caliper a little bit. So I'm just going to use a socket, and I'm going to have my assistant pump up the brakes. Of course, I already topped off the master cylinder, so we're all set. Go ahead and pump this up. All right, holding pressure. So I'm going to slowly open this up. Keep in mind when you use a socket, well, it can start spraying all over, so be careful. Unfortunately, like I said, I cannot use a wrench. There we go. Make sure it's all draining into your collection bucket. Now that it reached the floor, close it up and pump up again. All right, that has reached the floor. I'm going to close it off. You can let go of the pedal now. I had several cycles of clean, fresh fluid, so I'm satisfied with this one. Once again, clean everything off the best you can. You don't want any residual. Unfortunately, my bleeder on this side did not have a boot. If you have an extra one laying around, it's a good idea to put it on so that it doesn't clog up in the future, but I don't right now, so I'm just going to leave it as is. And after this is cleaned up, we can move to the last brake caliper, which is the driver's side front. And now with the brake master cylinder reservoir topped off, for the last time, let's bleed the driver's side front caliper. So take this boot off. This one fortunately has one. And with also an 11mm tool, wrench or socket, whatever you have, break this free after your assistant pumps up the brakes. So go ahead and pump it up. All right, they're holding pressure. I have my collection bucket ready. Break this free. And fluid stopped. Close it off, pump up again. I have no air and clean fluid, so I would say this is all set right now. At this point, let's do the final cleanup. Cap this off, and now you can put your wheels back on. Make sure you top off that master cylinder one last time. You want it to be nice and full, especially with brand new brakes like in this case. And there you have it. Take it for a road test, make sure everything works like it should.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.